So this was a somewhat difficult evening for me on Sunday evening as my hometown New England Patriots lost in the Super Bowl. But actually, the word Patriots got me thinking earlier in the week because I was looking for some merchandise about the New England Patriots. And when I was searching online, what I noticed was that if you search up kind of hats or T-shirts with the word Patriots, you get a lot of MAGA stuff. That this word patriot is actually a very MAGA coded word. The on the national Sirius radio network, for instance, the conservative channel with people like Sean Hannity and all these other guys is called the Patriot Radio Network. And I was thinking, there's something very strange about the fact that the term patriot is so coded as a right-wing MAGA word because Donald Trump is so obviously not a patriot. He's the least patriotic president probably we've ever had. And, if patriot means that you put your country above yourself, right? Donald Trump clearly does the opposite in these really blatant ways. So the Wall Street Journal recently reported that a sheikh connected to the royal family of the United Arab Emirates had put a huge amount of money into Trump's cryptocurrency business, and then as President Trump turned around and gave the UAE these very advanced microchips that the United States had never been willing to give the UAE before, right? So basically, a bribe where you put money in Trump's pocket and he does something that at least his predecessors didn't think was in the national interest, or this insane story where basically Trump is saying the federal government won't pay for the continual building of this rail network between New York and New Jersey unless they rename Penn Station after Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is claimed very clearly his ego is more important than whether people in New York, New Jersey basically have good rail service. So this is the antithesis of patriotism. And so it's an interesting question. Why is it that this term patriot is so coded as a MAGA right-wing word when the embodiment of MAGA is so clearly not a patriot? And I think one reason perhaps is that it's based on a kind of confusion between the idea of patriotism and nationalism. One way of thinking about that difference, although there are others, is that nationalism means putting your country above other countries. And so Donald Trump is in a certain sense a nationalist, right? I mean, he's very hostile to global cooperation. His general view is that international affairs are zero sum, and he wants to make weaker countries knuckle under to the United States. But that patriotism is different than nationalism. Patriotism is not about the relationship of your country to other countries. It's about the relationship of the individual to the country, right? And about the question of whether the individual will sacrifice their own self-interest for the collective good. One way of thinking about this difference actually is to compare the slogan that Trump had, America First, to the slogan that John McCain had when he ran in 2008, which was country first, right? So, Trump's slogan, America First, is based on the idea that supposedly these other politicians haven't put America first because they've cared too much about other countries. God forbid they were concerned about people dying of treatable diseases in Africa or something like that, right? And Donald Trump will have no moral obligation whatsoever to any country other than the United States. But what McCain was saying by country first was something very different. It wasn't about America's relationship to other countries. It was about the relationship of the individual to the country. And he was kind of holding himself up as an exemplar of the idea that people should make sacrifices for the country. And even though I disagreed with a lot of John McCain's political views, he clearly had made tremendous sacrifices for the country. He'd been tortured in a, North Vietnamese prison when he served in the US military during Vietnam. And Trump mocked him for that, right? Because Trump really has no ability to understand, to imagine why anyone would actually put the collective good, the national good in this case, above their own self-interest. For him, that just makes you a sucker and an idiot, right? But John McCain was actually talking about patriotism when Donald Trump is talking about nationalism. And so my hope is that people will better understand the difference of these terms, and that we may come to a day in the future in which I can celebrate the success of my hometown New England Patriots, and that progressives actually can celebrate the reclaiming of this term patriot, because I think it's clear today that that progressives in their willingness to sacrifice for the collective good, we see it, most in most extraordinary terms in Minnesota, but all over the place, are showing much, much deeper degree of patriotism than Trump and his cronies were basically willing to sell out the interests of the country in order to flatter their own egos and put money in their pockets.